Okay, welcome to tonight's session, the second session of the Parent Support Group for Study Skills Development. Tonight we are going to look at reframing and crafting development plans. One of the common questions I tend to get over the years is, how soon should we start planning for our children? What are the things that we need to do? What are the things that we supposed to do? And what are the things that we can do? So when I went on to gather the questions, two of them, as you can see here, I hope you can see the screen. Yeah, two of them asked about the study skills per se, which I will cover later on when we look at the the set of study skills, right? So the two questions is how to plan for minimal input to get maximum output. Can study skills really help in this sense? This is a question that I like to respond first because this is the reason why I designed the study skills in the first place, where students put in very minimal input to get the most out of it, right? For example, some of you are attending our term review workshop on term review on the 4th and the 5th of March. So now we have confirmed the venue for the 4th of March from 3 to 6 o'clock is at Alpha Lamos. And then on the 5th of March is at the Singapore Malay Chambers of Commerce along Jalan Pinang. So and that workshop is a clear example how you do minimal input to get the maximum outcome, where with just one simple exercise of the term review, parents can work with their children up to 8 applications of how to look at the term review in 8 different ways and gather certain things out of it. So that's an example of minimum input to a maximum output. How to plan for doable, consistent, and sustainable revision and study skills. I think it boils down to something that we work on here is that there are stages to study skills development. Okay, just pause there for a while. Shah, are you there?
Yes, I'm sorry. Yes.
Yeah, I put you as co-host there so they can bring people in.
Got it.
All right. So one of the ways in which that we deal with study skills development, which I will go into deeper with all of you later on in subsequent session, is that there are stages to study skills development. We don't just impart and then we stop there. There is the habituation process, the optimization process, and the mastery. Right. The other thing, Shah, if you can help me once 2 or 3 more come in, you can share the link to the Miro for them to go into the board. Yeah?
Okay, welcome. Thank you.
So these are again some of the questions that I gathered from the earlier set of Q&A. I've covered the one in pics are the things that I've covered in my blog post, right? And the one that I put the post-its are some themes that I draw from the question. So there are 2 on talking about urgency, and then 1 on attitude, 1 on language learning, 1 on scaffolding, 1 on habits, and 1 on special education. The next session that I want to talk about will be on timeliness. So that is where we will look a bit at the urgency. Then another session, we will talk about routines and habits. So it will come into nicely in subsequent sessions. Another administrative thing is that if you look at the board here at the top left-hand side is the schedule that I've put up. Given my current situation, I have a bit more time. So I may run more than 1 session a week so that everybody can get up to speed on skills and knowledge that they could impart to their children. For one, if everybody is agreeable and okay with it, I would like to have more weekly sessions for the month of March before we hit Ramadan, because during Ramadan, I will not be having any session. And I'm concerned that, you are not adequately equipped with certain skills that your children could use, especially during Ramadan. When I do study skills with students, I always like them to take advantage of Ramadan itself. For example, the period between Sahur and Subuh, right? While preparing for school, they could do like 5 minutes or 10-minute techniques, and that would be a good start for the day. So those are the things that I hope to work on. and hence later on in WhatsApp chat, I would like to check on if, if we go to a weekly session, how many of you are able to follow through. Okay, so look at the dates. So these are the proposed dates. I've not determined the topic for 10th of March because it goes based on voting and looking at your questions. And when I meet more of you for the family consultation, I will understand better of all your needs. So far, I've met with 3 families, right? And then this coming week, I'll be meeting with another family. And then we see how we go about getting this much more productive for all of us. Okay, at this point, any questions that you want to ask before I jump something about last session? The video of the last session is already here. You can click when you go into the board. You just need to double click the video and then it will play. All right. So okay, everybody. Yeah. So that is how it goes. And when you're done, just close it. It doesn't matter how many people are watching it. It is at your own pace. Just don't move around the thing so much. Just click on this arrow, double click, or you see this source here, just click here and you open up a new window to play the video. So today's session, the video will also be on the board here. So you can always take a look at it. So one of the things that I tend to do is to put everything in the board, so it becomes quite easy for you to just come in. It'll be open 24/7, so that for you to take a look. Okay. All right. Before I jump into today's topic, are there any questions that you have with respect to the last session? I'll take some questions or anything that is of immediate concern before I jump into today's session. Anyone? Maybe I just give 3 minutes. And look through any question from the last session or anything that is from now to then. Any questions? Anything you want to ask? Anything at all? Okay, so there's no question from the last session. I take it that all are okay. Anything, you can just watch the video again or ask me questions, right? The board, I've cleared the board just now. Later on, we will touch base on some of these questions. I will come back to this when we hit that bridge. So today's session is about reframing and crafting the development plans. And one of the things that influence the way we do study skills with children and with students is we base our entire system on the ATTEND development framework. The ATTEND development framework is looking at the first 8 years and then the subsequent 10 years. Before I integrated it into one framework, I was first looking at the first 8 years. What are the things that we need to do as parents in the first 8 years of our children's life? And then after that, the next 10 years, based on a 10-year plan thereafter, you just keep doing the 10-year plan. So what it means is that when someone hits 48 years old, for example, they would have done 4 10-year plans, and then the first 8 years as part of that. So the 10 years starts with that. If you do reflect on your life, probably that is also part of how much of our phases in life has been divided. Okay, so when we look at the ATTEND development framework, one of the things that I would like to introduce to you is the idea of attending. I use 810 as a pun, attend, not because it sounds like 810, but much influenced by my training in social work. In social work, when we meet the clients or the families, we attend to their needs. And attending to their needs is not just listening to them, but to assess what are the things that we can do to make their life better. So it involves the posture, it involves the non-verbal language, and involves a lot of other things that we do to make our clients or our beneficiary feel better and be much more functional in life. So I thought of bringing that concept and idea into study skills development, so that it is not just a matter of imparting skills, but also to ensure that much of the needs are covered. Right? So when we look at here, we see that in the beginning, there are enabling skills, schooling skills. Firstly, as parents, we should not assume that our children can pick up schooling skills, right? Just because we have all done it, every children in Singapore have done it, every children in the world have done it going to school. Part of the reason that a lot of children struggle the need for orientation and induction is because they need to pick up certain skills, right? So some of the skills like knowing how to organize your bags, how to pack it, how to fold your papers, how to sort it in your bag. So these are things that we always assume that our kids will pick up readily and easily. We don't think about, is this something that we need to help our kids to develop? But awareness, putting it into the integrated system of the ATTEND development framework helps us ensure that we are aware, hey, look, these are skills, and if they don't know how to do it, or we open their bags and it is messy, we know a skill is involved, right? So we have to check the skill first before we think that it is the attitude. So one of the usual, we all know as parents that one of our usual response is we think is the attitude. So we think maybe the child is lazy, not listening to us, and so forth, without checking first whether or not it's an issue where they do not know how to do it. Okay, so they just do the best they could. And for us, even when at work, we do the best we could, but it is not seen as the best where our bosses, we feel very lousy, and our children will feel the same. So on top of that, even is the schooling skills we need to be aware of, and that should come as part of our development plans, right? So I would call forth all of you here is that, when they start school and they couldn't do certain things, don't jump first into looking at their attitudes, but look at their aptitude or their skill. So, okay, think about their skill sets, before their attitude. So don't think that they don't want to do it. Which kid want to get scolded all the time? I know at one point in my life, I like to get scolded, for a short period of life, but then that is not always the case for every children. Okay. At any point, just stop and ask me questions before I blabber all on myself. Anything to share at this point? Any thoughts coming to any of your mind space as I talk about this? Anything to reflect on how you are handling the first 8 years? You can write it in chat. You can, unmute yourself and share. Any thoughts?
Assalamualaikum Surya. Faizal here.
Yeah.
Okay, just to add on, one I think the shared during the very first batch of students. I think I've taken your advice well. I think one of the skills also is basically timeliness.
Yeah,
so,
timeliness.
Yeah, so I have actually implemented that to my kids lah. So like what you mentioned previously during the first batch, to put a clock everywhere around the house for them to get a sense of the timing. So I've implemented that and it works lah.
Yeah, because the environment does play a part, right? But once, and when we start to think about it, it's because it was timeliness. You can develop that skill in being timely. You can learn it. It's not something that is organic to a person. It's something that can be learned and can be improved. So the first step here, I think, in reframing the development plan is not to assume that kids are picking it up themselves. Always check first in terms of their skill sets before we start assuming that it is their attitude, and usually the assumption is they're lazy, they don't want to do, they're not listening to me, they can't pay attention, and they can't, they forget, and so forth. Okay, so look at the skill sets first. And the other thing is, when we look at the first 8 years, I would just want to highlight to this portion. It is important to develop this set of skills, right? Okay. Yeah. Some will argue a need to look at new numbers and counting and so forth. The struggle with numbers is that, especially mathematical concepts, is our children takes time to develop their mental process of looking at abstract information. So they need to deal with absolute. Although, if we follow some theories and models on how children develop, there are certain age milestones that a child is supposed to develop them. However, we know that every child is unique. So when we try to impose certain things, push, it doesn't work, then much of the frustration comes up, right? So because we do not know exactly when our child will be ready to look at abstract things in terms of numbers and mathematical concepts, it'd be easier to push for the communication skills and the reading skills, the listening skills, and the speaking. One of the useful platform for this is, of course, in storytelling. Get them used to storytelling. When you read to them, there's a lot of articles about this. When you read to them, you must read with expression, expressions and non-verbal cues. So they start to learn tones, they start to learn the emotional, when a word, how is it being said, when it is angry, when it is sad, when you're pleading. So they would understand all this. So this is just the first 8 years. And from 9 years old always, then we can start to do heavy on the study skills. Hence, that's where we start of the 22 essential study skills and move on to the advanced skills. Okay. So I will talk about the 22 essential skills later. But first, I want to touch on about what you can do in the first 8 years. All right. In the first 8 years, it's always about an age of exploration. Gardner has this thing called multiple intelligences. There are 8, but actually he has 9. The 9th one was there in the beginning, but he took it out and then put it in because it deals with spirituality, religious belief, and so forth. So in order to make this secular, he took it out and then put it back in later. Is existential intelligence. So a lot of the multiple intelligences do not include that. But in the later books, he does include the 9th intelligence, which is existential intelligence. However, when I use this, when I recommend for parents to use this, it's not so much to measure which of these intelligence does your child possess. I always recommend to use this as a checklist, to make sure that we as parents give our child the opportunity to explore these 8 areas, right? The reality is that, the child will only know what they're good at when they're adequately exposed. So get them involved in sports, get them relate with others, and then you observe and you see how are they inclined to these intelligences that is being promoted around, right? So how can you do this is, I'm sure, of course, for those who have the means, there are enrichment programs that you can send your child to, but there are also other programs that are available at community clubs, community centers, or if you have a big family, to come in gatherings and, get them exposed to these things. And sometimes you can be surprised, we make assumptions that only at a certain age that they could pick up certain things, but in reality, when given the chance at any age, actually they could start to pick up things very well, because the child's mind is something like a sponge where they can learn quite fast. One of the reasons why they probably learn very fast is that they don't have much prior knowledge for new knowledge to be connected to. So they are just able to absorb that knowledge quite readily. So the part about you said use the multiple intelligences as just a reference point, a reference checklist for you to ask yourself, have I exposed my child to music? Have I exposed my child to, interpersonal skills? Do I let them mix around with people of different ages? So have I, exposed my child to this and so forth, right? And when we introduce the other part about when we introduce certain things to see whether they tick on it or they bite it or whether there's any traction with them, we have the opportunity to also teach about perseverance and discipline. In the sense that, when they take on something, they have to go through it. They don't, you encourage them not to easily give up. So there's opportunity to impart perseverance. Okay, so one of the things that I tend to do with my kids is that, when you start something, you got to pull it through to a minimum milestone, and after you've achieved that milestone, you are free to choose to continue or not continue. So that is where you start to build perseverance, or you start to build commitment. So another thing that we can look at is, how do we develop commitment? Okay. Okay, so commitment, right? So that's generally what we use this for, this a way to check When they, of course, when they go into primary school, the other thing that I always tend to take advantage of, which is beyond being the first 8 years, is the young scientist batch. What we do is that we check on with teachers in school to make sure to see whether or not the schools offer, right? As parents, you can be a bit proactive. It doesn't cost much, if I'm not mistaken, it's about less than $5 per batch scheme. List of activities for them to do. I do with my kids, then they learn how to do the report writing, the report compiling, right? So this, I think, not mistaken, from primary 3 or 4, they can start doing this. So that doesn't come in the first 8 years, but something you can follow through in terms of using the multiple intelligences as a checklist. Okay. So that is a reference point covering the first 8 years. So then comes the question, people are then, why, how do my child find the time? How does my child find the time to do this? And this is the reason why the essential study skills are designed to help students with two things. Okay, the essential study skills help to save time and help to improve recall strength. Okay, we have a suite of various recall activities for students to naturally recall things without having to memorize. So why do I do this? Because personally, I don't like to memorize things. I like it to come naturally, and hence this habit of keep on reflecting and referring to the reading materials for me to remember better. All right, so this is how the essential study skills help in you tracking and monitoring your child over the years. One of the reasons for this is, personally, myself having received scholarships, one of the things that I learned is that in order to be competitive for scholarship and hence save us quite some, or give our child opportunity to study or go to places that we may not have the means to do so, is to have a very strong, substantial portfolio, right? And when I look at my own opportunities that came, as well as fellow scholars, those others who also receive scholarship as me, is that they tend to have activities outside school, right? So that's the reason why for all our kids, we enroll them in performing arts outside school. One reason is to strengthen their portfolio. The other reason is, to let them get immersed into their cultural heritage, right? So, and the third reason is to help them have some level of continuity when they go through the transition. One of the things I observe that students struggle when they transit from primary 6 to secondary school, or from secondary to post-secondary, is that they lose friends. They lose friends, and some children, as they grow older, they find it much more difficult to make new friends. So that's where they struggle socially. So by having an activity outside that provide that continuity from primary to secondary to post-secondary, they don't entirely lose their friends. They have some level of continuity outside that could help with the transition processes, right? So one of the things that we want to look at, one, is to have a substantial portfolio. Why we're doing this. And then two, you have continuity, okay, in social life. What's the second one? I forget. But mainly these are the two main reasons why they have should have something outside school. Then you wonder, if outside school, is it going to be recognized by the school? That comes with conversations with the teachers. So when we each time when our kids go into a new school, we meet up the teachers, we check in with them, we tell them that our kids involved in this thing outside and so forth. Is the school going to consider it? Okay, so this is actually the ECA, extra curricular activities. Okay, so this is the old term ECA, is extra, is outside the curriculum. So you have, to maintain a substantial portfolio and to have continuity in social life. So this is the why this talk is about reframing and then crafting development plan. Is that in the first instance, you let your child try out a few activities, and then when they like it, you support it, give as much support. We learned it quite late actually to give support, only when our second daughter was about 8 years old, that we realized that we needed to do more than just saying yes or no whether they can participate in more activities beyond the usual scheduled activities. Was that we found that they are losing opportunities when we don't do that, right? So when we started to invest our time sending them, waiting for them, fetching them from activities outside, negotiating with teachers, mediating with teachers, when they do production and they get tired for them to miss schools and so forth, it gives them the opportunity, so our girls have gone overseas, participate in overseas festival, and that opens up their horizon and their world and their perspective about the world quite differently. So it can be anything. So what I'm suggesting here is pick an activity and support where they can be exposed to many things, many aspects of life, to travel, to be resilient on their own, right? So one other than performing arts, could be in sports, or could be in uniforms groups or adventure outdoor groups, everything, or it could be something that you set up for your own family that you can participate in. I know some families are very outdoor driven, so they plan and they train and they travel together and they hike together. So there's something that could provide that kind of learning outside the formal school curriculum. Okay, so at this point, any question? Does anyone have anything to say or share? Anybody? Any thoughts? Any thoughts? There's how many of you here? Okay, better. Yeah. Yeah, we just need to do it. Okay. Now I want each of you to just pick a color first. If you can come onto the board and see this part of the board. I want you to pick a color here. You know, this sticker here, not this one. Later you can put in your name. How you put in your name is beside the color. You double click and then you type in your name. Okay, but that doesn't matter. You can do that later. What is important is this part. You just take a color each. You know, whether you take the black, blue, and I want you to place where is the age of your child. Okay, so for example, let's say I take white. I have one kid is above more than 19. I have two actually here, and then one here. Okay, so the white is me. So you put your kids there. So we can see the distribution of this group. Okay. So what's important now, you know your own colors. Okay, you know your own colors. Yeah, later on, we sort out putting the names beside it. Okay, so know your own colors. If you see someone moving your color, then you alert them. And then we see. I can see that the light blue is Mr. Ahmad. Okay, I try to, this is a bit. This is me. Okay. Let me adjust the thing first. Yeah. Because they all overlap. Don't put in your names first. I will do the names. Yeah. Okay. Okay. And who's the dark blue?
Mine too.
Oh, yes. Okay. Okay. So let's look at the distribution. Okay, so this group, last year group, we have quite heavy on the first 8. So I think with this group, we see quite a fair distribution. And you can see my kids are all going beyond the 18-year mark. My youngest is 18 this year, going to be 18 this year. So she's at the end of the 18 years development framework. Okay. So, okay. All right. So from moving from the early consciousness of reframing the thought and how you want to develop for the first 8 years, looking at, the multiple intelligences just as a checklist, as a reference point to check, have I introduced my child to this? Have I introduced my child to that? And that is something we can work on with this group. For example, if you do your own checklist and you realize that, I don't have opportunity to introduce my child to nature, then raise it up in the group and see what we can do as a group to introduce our children to nature or to the outdoors, right? So this is what the parent support group is for me to introduce certain things that we need to think about, and then we can gather our resources, share our ideas, and see how best to raise our kids. right? Being in Singapore, I think the design of our education system seems to fit very nicely on a 2-year framework. So hence the grouping into 7 to 8 or 8 to 9, 11 to 12, and so forth. Okay. So for those of us who are having kids in the PSLE this year, you know, there are some milestones that we are going to be very concerned about. Okay. So let's look at so okay. So one of the things, of course, at PSLE here, we tend to pay attention. And then there's a subject selection here. And then there is that O level here. And then here, depending on the age here, is, you know, either A level or a poly diploma, and how you make your pathway to university, right? Of course, at the P4 mark, you have the subject banding, right? And the first milestone at the end of P2 is where they face their first exam, so somewhere here. So you can see that there is a lot of milestone coming in every 2 years, and that is how one way to reframe how you want to develop your child is to, instead of looking at 1 year, you look at it in a 2-year frame, right? Let me illustrate why this is very important. Okay, if we based on a 1-year program, we look at each year, we only have 10 months with our kids with respect to their development in school. So we're looking at 10 months blocks, right? And then we get stressed when they don't meet the milestones. However, when we look at the 2 years frame, we can have this, the November, December holiday as the buffer for us to, you know, make good for whatever is we feel that we need to top up with our kids, then it becomes a buffer. So instead of this 10 months, and then we get so stressed up, there is that buffer. And also know that in between this, you have your 1 month June break, holiday break, that you can take advantage of. Okay. So when we look at a 2-year frame and plan properly, right, we have quite a nice, you know, pacing of a kind of a spurt, and then we consolidate together, we regroup, and then we go again. So when we look at a 10-month kind of development, then this is what you are going to see. Okay, this is what you're going to see. So that hence today is about reframing the thought, how we want to think about the development, instead of looking at just, you know, 1 year based on the school right now, whether they're in primary 3 or 4, but we look at a 2-year time frame, and we have these 2 months to plan out how they should progress and so forth. And this is important, especially for us who have children who are born sometime in August, September, October, you know, towards the tail end of the school academic year, in which then they are good, then they are better developed towards the end. So this could explain why sometimes your child at the beginning cannot do, but at the end can do better, but still struggle because the beginning they struggle with a lot of things. So looking at the 2-year will kind of compensate for those who are born later to catch up, and then make their necessary progress in the second year of the 2-year timeline. So this is the other aspect that I want you to think of, that we look at the 2-year runway rather than a 1-year runway. Okay. So whatever you want to do, think of it. Okay, what am I going to do a child for the 2 years? Then someone will ask, now my child is in the second year, what can I do? Then we have no choice but to do intervention. And after the end of this year, we look at the next 2 years how we can pace out their development. Yeah, and it becomes less stressful in that sense. Yeah. Any question? Anything you want to ask? Let me just treat anything you want to ask in your chat. Now that I will go through some of the questions that some of you have posted earlier. And you feel all of this confused and you want a family consultation, you really want to lay out the plans for your child. Okay, when we talk about plans, it is not the coming out like action plan that, you know, for those some of us who are in business, you come out with that kind of action plan. And the plan here is more of broad strokes of where you think your child should be heading and how you can support build that portfolio. And when we have a portfolio in mind, it means that when we take a portfolio approach, it's not only about them, for example, getting involved in soccer, right? It's not just about them sending them to soccer, but to see at what level of competition or exposure are they getting out of soccer, right? We can have the fun, yes, good, but you know, in the way the reality the world works is that if they're going to spend the 2 hours in soccer, it'd be good if the soccer that they have could actually help to build their portfolio, right? For example, not even if they don't, if they're not able, no opportunity to they just want to play, have fun, that's good, have fun. But at least, you know, you can do the monitoring and check, you know, are they only always just playing one position? No, is there a chance for them to try other position to see, to help them experience, you know, a variety of roles and responsibility. So that is the portfolio approach, where you look at it and say, okay, now my child is doing this for this period of time. Do I want him to experience something else, right? Or how else can he grow? Okay, so that is what it means looking at the portfolio. But even if you're assessing you're fine with that he or she is adequate in that kind of exposure, then it's also fine. The whole idea here is that we are becoming much more conscious and much more deliberate in how we support our children's development. Okay, as there no question, let me just go through some of the questions that have been posted earlier. Some of them are quite related, because now it's also the 10 o'clock mark. For those who are not familiar or how we run, is that much of the sharing that I do or activities only in the first hour. In the second hour, in the next half an hour, we go into a discussion. We want to talk about things or even raise new concerns, and you know, or even for you to openly share if you want to some struggles or challenges, or you want ideas on how best to develop your child, then this is where the last half an hour is about. So now let's look at the question, how to be able to come up with a workable plan, how to ensure consistency in carrying their plan out. This is why it's good to enroll them in some form of formal setup, some form of formal structure. They go outside, you know, either they get involved in the CC, or they get involved in the, you know, or specific groups. So they have that, and normally groups have a kind of progressive curriculum that they work with children. So that is how you maintain some form of consistency. And even if your child is the one who, after 1 or 2 years they get bored, they move on, it's fine, because they like the diversity. And then later on, the whole idea to see how they can gather and make some of these experiences much more relatable to one another. But even so, the kind of base that they get, the broad-based experience, will help them later on in life, right? As they are able to get older and draw upon what they learned earlier. So one way to ensure consistency is to enroll into formal programs, formal structured programs. Okay. Okay. So those that comes weekly or monthly and so forth, yeah. So this is one, yeah. So this is one suggestion. Anybody have any thoughts how you can make it consistent in carrying out the plan, other than enroll in structured programs? School CCA are fine. School CCAs are fine. Only that the struggle with school CCAs is that it stops when the child leaves the school, right? Okay. Should anybody any thoughts on how to ensure consistency in carrying out the plan? Okay. Okay, I'm just only not like patiently waiting, because I want to impart at least one key skill today before we leave, right? When is it appropriate to include their voice or opinion for these plans? How do we decide and agree on the non-negotiable? And at what age do we let a child co-plan with us in his or her studies? Okay. How do we get our child involved? As early as we can. It also helps us to understand what are their concerns and what are their fears. And also, engage in that negotiation and discussion quite early, because when we inculcate a habit where they can freely talk to us and freely share what they feel about things, then as they grow older, they find that safe space with us. They find that safe space with us where they can openly share. But when we start to shut down at the beginning, and then we start to create the kind of barrier and the distance, then by the time they hit adolescence and teenager, that's where we struggle the most in terms of communication. So here, I would say, as early as possible, right? But then you think that, then if will it be like up to them, suka-suka, they want the one? That's where we teach the perseverance. You add conditions. You add conditions. Say that if you want to stop, there must be a reason. You can even put measures like 3 reasons. Tell me 3 reasons why you don't want to continue. Can we just go for another 2 more sessions and see how? So you add conditions that relates to milestones, clear milestones, right? For example, let's work for at least one performance, or let's work for at least one game. Try out the game, we play after the training, then we see how. Or you go into martial arts, so try out one qualification exam or test, and then you see how after that. So you add a condition and you add clear milestones, and you come to a game. And this is where we begin to develop that kind of relationship where they can share things with us, and we also establish certain boundaries, and these boundaries are the milestones that that need to be achieved in order to see how much of that decision is theirs and how much of that decision is ours, right? Of course, even for my own kids, even my eldest now, 26, I do intervene, when I see there are better opportunities for her to take on. Even so, I will put at the end, I would say it's entirely up to her. She's going to be 26 this year. So at that age, you want them to take on more decision. And how you decide whether or not the weight of the decision falls on them for us is how they have grown and matured over the years. And whether or not when they make those decisions, you can see the underlying rationale as well as the basis in which they make those decisions. Right? So I hope you're following that. Any thoughts so far? Yeah. I think this part here does connect to this question here when we look at, the judgment part, you add condition and milestones. Okay, so because we are eat more garam, you see, so right, we feel that we know better, but at least clear add conditions, clear milestones. And if they are older, thing you need to do is you need to add the rationales.
Tia, can I share something?
Yeah.
Okay. Because my child now, my eldest now is a teenager, so it's like getting to know her all over again. So there's a lot of there's some challenges along the way. So, and at the same time, we are also seeking help with this with relevant experts. So one of the things that was shared was that instead of us wanting to share our experience, like you said, Makagat, we know more, is it's one way is to ask them, would you like us, or would you like me to show you some strategies how you can handle this problem?
Yeah.
Or how, or maybe you want to know how I would do it as such. So at least they have a choice. They know that, oh, I can choose rather than we tell them, which they may think that it's like nagging or whatsoever. So it's more like also like a bonding time for them and us lah, I feel.
Yeah. That's definitely an approach, especially when you're dealing with teenagers, that you need to give them a sense that they have ownership of their own life. But one of the biggest challenges in adolescence is the identity formation. And then identity formation comes into who they are. And who they are with respect to people they are, related to, parents, siblings, and so forth, people they are not related to. And part of forming the identity is knowing the boundaries. And part of that boundaries comes with the decision that they have on their own life, right? So even for our own kids, we do provide that kind of leeway for them to say, yes, I want your help, or yes, I don't want your help. And it comes even with me imparting the study skills to them. So while initial part when they're younger, I said, no, you come, you sit down. But as they get older, I said, no, would you want to try out something that can help you in this? If they say don't want, then it's done, right? But that only becomes possible. It is my perspective. If when they are younger, we provide some basic foundation of certain skill sets, so we don't have to worry later on. Yeah. And one of the reasons why I kind of enforce family meals since very young, to always eat together as much as we can, while now we are not doing so frequently anymore. But when they're younger, we do that a lot. We're coming back tired, we wait, we sit down and eat, is because my work in youth development, right, learn that family bonding time, especially meal time, is very important. Many research have showed that. So it need not be dinner, it could be breakfast, it could be breakfast, or the way we work and go to school, the likely time we can sit down together is either breakfast, dinner, or supper. So these are some of the points that we have contact with. And when I study social work, again, it's being emphasized that your relationship with your teenage child is actually determined much earlier. How in their younger days we set boundaries, and then we provide them that space to grow. Of course, today, I've not been updated with the research, but the nature of the world today is very different, right? Where they are not just fixed to our family ecosystem, but also the social media ecosystem that does not know boundaries. Okay, so that becomes a bit of a challenge. But that is, yes, that is one way, especially when you're dealing with teenagers, like you mentioned, you're just getting to know them all over again, and a lot of guesswork. And this is where I think you feel at that point, I can remember a time when we were facing this situation as well. The idea is you want to help, but you cannot help, and then you start to feel very helpless. So what can I do? I want to help. My child doesn't want me to help. And then I can just sit here and then look at what is happening to them. Based on me eating more garam, I know not going to turn out. But that is something that they have to learn. They have to learn, and then for us to sit back and then provide the support for them to recover from that. And it's because precisely because of that, working on the 2-year timeline would allow you much more space to work with them in that way, right? So for us, when they're Sec 1, their results don't matter so much. When they're Sec 3, the results don't matter so much because we are looking at the 2-year runway and that comes. So when their results don't matter so much in that sense, we focus a bit more on their social life and their mental well-being and so forth, working in and out with them. Yes, today more of the young are getting anxiety-related issues, mood issues. There's this book by, I forgot her name, about how the brain is wired today because of technology, because of social media. Children are growing up with a very different wiring than some of us who are in the 50s, 40s, and 50s. Okay. Yeah. So sharing from Sharifah in the site, yes, they got passage. Yes, agree. At one point, my girls also feel like they don't want to dance, so I let them explore elsewhere. But somehow, they keep coming back. So some of them have actually not stopped for 1 or 2 years and then come back. It's fine, because even for us also at times we want to get away from something we've been doing for years, to explore whether we can do other things, right? Spending 6 years, in Silat 3 years is good enough that provide that kind of foundation. Okay, so the idea here again, like I said, how you want to negotiate the space of how much decision is on them and how much decision is by putting conditions and clear milestones. The idea of nagging, I was thinking about this quite a bit. That when we talk about, let's say we want to let's say that the intent is to remind. We want to give a reminder, right? So this is the intent. Okay, we want to give a reminder, but then there's also that time factor. So this is, let's say, an acceptable period of time. So when too much reminder comes within the same, what is assumed to be the same timescape, it becomes a nagging, it becomes a chore. However, when it comes timely, right, then it becomes something else. So this actually got me thinking into my interest in researching or understanding how we perceive time and how we conceive of time and then how we feel time. I know it has a lot to play with whether something is perceived as nagging in one perspective, another perspective, it comes as a reminder. And until these two different ideas, or whether it's a reminder or nagging, can only be reconciled when we understand what is each other's sense of time. Okay, so that's just a footnote there to put, and when we talk about timeliness, we can come back to it again. Okay, now the last question here, before I want to share one thing that you could do with your child on a daily basis if you want to. how do we balance and include both our needs in a plan? Okay, so I think this has been covered earlier that related to the previous questions. Is that I just believe that, you know, the way to weigh them is always be clear about what are the conditions and what are the milestones that they need to do. So for example, I mean, the milestones are within 3 to 4 years, but if they've gone for 6 years, that is fair enough, right? That is fair enough for them to move on to something else if they want to, especially if they find that they are not growing. And that is a key thing for us to, when we look at portfolio development, it is not the number of years that they spend in activities, what they do within a period of time, right? So if they can learn so many things in 1 year, even if after 1 year they feel they want to move on to something else, it's fine, because they have learned quite substantially for that 1 year experience. They don't need to spend 2 years to learn more things. If that is just what they have learned is quite enough for them. Okay. So when we look at reframing the development plans, is to have a kind of a checklist, you know, to think that in the first 8 years, you know, to start off by thinking about their skill sets before we make assumptions about their attitudes, right? Focus on language skills or language arts in the beginning. Easiest ways to read out aloud to your child, especially the smaller one, with expression, so that they can know how to identify emotions, how we relate to words, and so forth. In looking at opportunities to see what are they much more inclined to, look at enrichment programs and look at, you know, community clubs programs that you can share. And if it doesn't fit, then we can bring it to the parent support group and see how we can help each other out. So when we add things like conditions and milestones, we have the opportunity to impart perseverance and the idea of commitment. And when we do extracurricular activities outside the school, we can help to develop a substantial portfolio and also have that continuity in social life that goes beyond the school. Right? And when we talk about substantial portfolio, it is not based on duration, not on duration, but attainments, what they learn. Attainments more on what they learn. Okay. All right. So this is the issue. This is what it means by having the portfolio perspective. So some of us, have quite enough pacing, like we have 1-2 years gap year between the next child. That give us to reflect and relook. Some of us have back to back. So you need to be mindful of how you can quickly shift the way you plan for them. As I think we have a tendency to just cut and paste, raising the second child the same like the first child and so forth. Okay, so one way consistency is to do structured programs, like I mentioned again, add conditions and add rationales as they get older. Okay, and for the specific thing about anxiety and what is real, if you really need help, do let me know. We can sit down and talk about it. Hear why a 2-year runway, in terms of development plan. How you do it, you want to document it, or you just want to have the broad stroke in your mind, it's fine. And this is why, because we want them to develop be enriched by so many activities, they cannot be spending a lot of time on school and schoolwork, right? So this is why the study skills come in and why we're talking about this, because those things can only be possible when our kids don't get overburdened with so much schoolwork, and then they have to go for all these extra activities to develop themselves, knowing that it is good for them. So one way is to equip them with study skills that save their time and they can do other things. Yeah. Okay. Okay, in terms of additional academic subject taken outside school, what would be a recommended timeline to allow the tryout? there is no timeline, because if you really want to try out, then you at least cover 2 topics or 3 topics. After that, you give a mock test and then assess whether they can handle it. So I mean, if secondary school, you have that the SCAB syllabus that you can refer to, you have past year paper, let them try out the past year O-level paper after they have learned 2 or 3 topics, and just focusing on the 2 or 3 topics that they have covered and see whether can they handle it or not. Okay, if they find it's too overwhelming, then probably they may have to rethink, right? So 3 to 3 topics will be just nice, but if you really want to ascertain whether that is a tryout, then we have to work a bit harder and look with at least 50% of the syllabus, because if they cannot get at least 30% out of that 50%, then it's the chances of them not going beyond a pass for the other 50% can also be a struggle. Yeah. So yeah. Okay. Any question before I impart one skill that you can do with your child? The moment, you know, they can start talking to you. And especially for those of us who go back late, you know, we have our child waiting for us and want to talk to us. So we can take advantage of that, right? And this skill is called the daily review and reflection. Daily review and reflection is one of the earliest skills that we can impart to our children. Okay, so I'm trying to open up the book. Oh, I think I erased up the workbook. Okay. Okay, if for those of you who have the hard copy workbook or you have downloaded this PDF, you can refer to this page. Let me just open up the page. Or you can come here also and just change the page like this. You should be able to see the page change. Yeah? Okay, somewhere at the beginning, we have this thing called the daily review and reflection. Okay, the system takes a bit difficult to load. Okay. The daily review and reflection is actually, you know, requires at most 15 minutes at the end of each day. Ideally, it should be done as a conversation or as a reflection piece for the child. When they are younger in primary school, especially, is about giving them about at least 10 or 15 minutes at the end of your tiring day or day for you to listen and then for them to download, right? It can be anything. When they're young, just ask how their day, what they want to tell about the story. Then when they go into primary school, then you can customize it a bit after they download for the first 5 minutes, whatever they want to say, into asking them about what are the things that they learn in school. This is very important to develop this habit of reflecting their day in school and learning, right? Research have shown that, you know, when we do not think back about the things that we have learned or the new information that we pick up for the day by having an end of day reflection, when we sleep, that memory will not hold so strongly, because when we sleep, you know, our brain goes to a bit some form of reset and so forth that clears certain things from memory. Hence, that's why most of the time when we wake up, we can't remember much of the things that we do the day before and much more days after that. Because when we sleep, our brain kind of resets, clears certain things up. And research have shown that, you know, students start learning in school about 8 o'clock. And by 6 hours after that first contact with a new information, they need to revisit it again. It's about 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock in the afternoon. But we don't usually have that luxury. So minimum, when they are back in school or after school, when they reach home, let them review or reflect on the day. And all they have to do is just for every subject that they learn, for each subject that they just recall any 3 things they can remember about what they have learned, especially for those who have gone to school. For those who have not, if they're staying at home, even if they're staying at home with their mothers, or whoever is at home, whether stay-at-home father or stay-at-home mother, the working parent come back to listen, whatever the child is going through for the day. If you can't do it on a day, at least once a week, a kind of weekly review, or best every other day if you can commit to it. The benefit of it is that they get so used to talking to you when they're young, and then when they become teenager, they are least likely, yes, they are more likely to be able to continue those kind of conversations with you. Although, of course, when they hit becoming teenager, it is not always guaranteed from experiences that they will be inclined to one area, because we are not the only influence in their the way they form their characters or their identity. Okay. Right. So when they do the daily review the conversation, they does not need to be written down, right? It is best done in a conversation. And because it's best done in a conversation, with today's technology, we can do it in many ways, right? So for example, they can WhatsApp you an audio recording. Okay. Or they can send you, a video call recording, or whatever. It can be any form. Or they can write it down, draw it out. What we want is them to go through that reflection at the end of the day, to get the habit, for them to go into their head and make that connection stick, and then so that that connection of pulling out is there. And that's what we want to do. So it can be a drawing, for example, in the activities that we did in the student care. I think for some of the students, we asked them to draw out their experience for the day or what they learned instead of using words. I've encouraged the student care to also do a video recording instead of them writing down, because everybody is tired. So create a booth where they just go to the corner, they record one minute video of them sharing, or 3 minutes video of them sharing about the day, and that's it. The whole idea is to reflect. And when they get older and when they get used to, once they get habituated into this daily review, after a few weeks, then we can question them or prompt them to think things that are much more related to their studies, right? So this is why I want to share this here, so that you can start doing it here, and in 2 or 3 weeks time, when you want to frame your prompts and your questions so that they think about what they study for the day, it will not be a too shock for them, because they got used to just talking and sharing to you about their day. So what are some of the questions? Any suggestion? What are the questions, or what are the things you can say to your child to initiate the conversation? You can put in chat. Anybody? Share. What can you ask or say to your child to initiate the daily review? Anyone? So who did you have recess with? Yes. Who did you have recess with? Yeah. And recess is a very important milestone for us to begin the questioning. When I work with lower primary students, like who do you sit with, who do you recess with? They always remember. So I mean, I've done this quite a few times with primary school students, especially. When I ask them what they study, they cannot remember. But when I ask them what they have for recess or what they do, they can suddenly get very excited and they talk about it. So what do I do next? I ask them, so what do you have before recess, or what do you have after recess? And slowly you can see how they can build up their recall. And then they realize that, yeah, I can remember what I learned. The reason for this is that kids and we adults as well, we learn by association, and it's all connected in our head. So when we can find and log into one node, it's easier to go to the next node and dig up the recall for them. Okay, so the homework from today is actually, since last week, is about doing the study skills inventory. For this session is, try out this daily review and reflection. Just carry on for almost 5 minutes only, 10 minutes is fine. Don't drag it out too long. Just simple question: who did you eat today? What did you do today? What was exciting for you? Or if they don't look happy, what's troubling you? Or let them be quiet, and then when they got chance, then do you want to talk about it? Those kind of prompts that you can do with them. When you start off, you don't have to do every day. You can start off with once a week, let's say on a Wednesday or Monday, and then 2 weeks later you add. Like now you start Mondays, and next week you start Monday and Wednesday, and after that Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and then Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and Tuesday. You slowly add in until you can do it at least daily or every other day. Okay. So with that, I open up a last question. You open up to any question, have any questions, and then we can call it a night. 5 minutes. If you have any question, go through all the materials. And I hope you are much clearer about how you want to develop and craft the plans for your children. Remember broad strokes. So don't come up with a document, broad strokes. And one of the things I do is just open up like a rough kind of CV or resume document for them and just fill in the spaces lah. Especially for those of us whose kids win awards and so forth, under the award column, the EduSave award, you can start to put it in. And then you can show them, this is your achievement that you've done, projects that you've done. Yeah, do that. Okay, so let me see. So 5 minutes last, closing, look at the materials, see if you have any questions. Then there's nothing, that's it for today. When we first do it with our child, the intention is just to habituate this conversation or this study skill, right? So we do it for the first few times, especially when dealing with young children. Do it for them to get into the habit. So the first stage, if they're younger, maybe just I use this chart here, right? From good question, because then I can do this. I'm trying to get my shapes. Okay. Okay. So from about here, here to about here, right? Your DRR is more to habituate. To habituate. So you're just talking to them. You can take the opportunity to listen to them and let them if you listen to them and to let them express themselves, then when you can hear for yourself your child's command of the language. Okay, so this is the part. Then if at this age is more on down here, somewhere here's an overlap here, right? Is to Maintain interest in learning. Okay. And then when you do somewhere from here, then we look at the facts, or facts of so if you are intervening your child at this age 10 and above, then what we always do with students, we give them a small little booklet and then they write it down. That's when we do with groups. But when we do one-on-one with students, we tell them, okay, just WhatsApp us your daily review. They can WhatsApp to parents the daily review. Just type, open up one WhatsApp just for doing the daily review. They type 3 things that they learn on that day, and per subject, and then that's it. For maths, what are 3 things? For science, what are the 3 things? That's about it. So again, here it comes into stages, right? So depending on what is the age of your child, we have a different intent for the daily review and reflection. So is that clear? Ken? Thumbs up or anything? Ken? Okay. So here you can see how when we do impact study skills, there is that age factor that comes in. Yeah. Okay. Any other question? Okay, then I think I thank you so much for your time tonight. So I will get back into the chat to see when all is okay to continue next week, so that we don't miss much, as I'm not running the sessions at night during Ramadan. So we can focus on our ibadah for Ramadan and fasting and so forth. So I don't want you to delay certain things. So I want to check with the group later on whether we can do something on more weekly. Right, again, everything's recording, as long as these numbers like this, at least 5 or 8 of you inside and willing to share your thing. So I'm not talking alone. I could just run the session, record it, and the rest could listen to it later on. Okay. Okay, with that, thank you so much. Have a good night.